Lu Shang turned his back on the gathered crowd, his expression serene as he approached the crystal pillar. Determined to undergo the certification process, he moved with a quiet confidence that belied his age. Captain Lan, standing with his arms crossed, watched Lu Shang with a smirk, his eyes filled with skepticism. Hongyu also observed silently, her thoughts hidden behind a calm facade. As Lu Shang neared the crystal pillar, Captain Lan couldn't resist making a snide remark. "He doesn't even have a certification," he said, his tone dripping with disbelief. He turned slightly towards Hongyu, pointing at Lu Shang with his thumb. "Your Tiger Scorpions team is at least an A-rank star general team. How could you let a rookie like him, who hasn't even been certified, join you?" Hongyu, feeling a surge of irritation, approached Captain Lan and stared directly into his eyes. "Why does this matter so much to you?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with annoyance. "What would happen if I, an old cow, ate tender grass?" Captain Lan looked confused, not immediately grasping her meaning. She crossed her arms and continued, "Chasing after me also counts as an old cow eating tender grass. You're almost 80 years old." Her words hit Captain Lan like a heavy blow. His composure shattered. He began shaking his head in denial. "I didn't mean it like that," he stammered, but his protests were cut short as his men stepped forward, grabbing him by the arms to steady him. Hongyu interrupted his flustered explanation, turning her gaze back to Lu Shang. "Stop talking and pay close attention to Lu Shang's test," she advised Captain Lan with a serious expression. "Despite being only 20 years old, he's about to show you something impressive." Captain Lan turned to Hongyu, puzzled. "What do you mean?" he asked, his brow furrowing. He puffed out his chest, recalling his own achievements. "I am one of the best in the 9th Battle District, a 7-star grade expert," he boasted. "I'm in the top 10. What level of martial skill could someone as young as Lu Shang possibly reach?" Lan's voice grew louder as he spun on his heels, pointing to himself with both thumbs. "I'm in my prime at 80 years old," he exclaimed. "I envision myself as a great master with a sword. Before I turn 150, I'll achieve the level of a great master." Meanwhile, Lu Shang approached the crystal pillar, his calm demeanor unshaken by Lan's outburst. He assumed an offensive stance, his eyes focused, ready to strike. Captain Lan pointed at him, addressing Hongyu again. "What does he have?" he scoffed. Lan imagined Lu Shang, his mind filling with images of a handsome young man with chiseled abs. "Besides his looks, what does he have? In what aspect could he possibly surpass me?" Lan's team members, energized by their captain's confidence, began to cheer and jump for joy. They moved with an exaggerated grace, like ballerinas in a celebratory dance. The bald man, his tattoo gleaming under the lights, turned to Hongyu. "Captain Lan is a top-notch partner," he said earnestly. "It's hard to find a better one." Captain Lan, his hand under his chin, closed his eyes and smiled. He basked in the adoration of his subordinates, thinking to himself, "My team is the best." The bald, burly man from the Tiger Scorpion team stepped forward, his fists clenched. "Why are we discussing such nonsense?" he demanded. Hongyu, arms crossed, glanced at her teammate in silence, puzzled by his sudden involvement. Captain Lan and his men looked at the bald man with confusion. The bald man approached Captain Lan, pointing at Lu Shang with a smile. "What if Lu Shang is not only more handsome and younger, but also much stronger?" he challenged. Captain Lan's eyes narrowed as he tried to process this. He turned his head to one side, clenched his teeth, and with sweat dripping from his forehead, retorted, "Are you saying Lu Shang is stronger than me? You must be delirious." Turning back to the crystal pillar, Captain Lan's thoughts were interrupted by a blinding light. The pillar had activated, its energy surging in response to Lu Shang's presence. Several seconds later, the light faded, revealing an astonishing sight. Everyone in the room stared in shock. The crystal pillar displayed several glowing diamonds, indicating the incredible power within it. Lu Shang had struck the pillar, and his energy surged through it, passing from diamond to diamond with ease. Captain Lan stood dumbfounded. "Impossible," he muttered, unable to believe his eyes. The entire room was silent, each person trying to comprehend the magnitude of Lu Shang's power. As Lu Shang's energy continued to rise, it reached the second-to-last diamond. He took a few steps back, observing silently. In a sudden burst, his energy filled every diamond, causing the pillar to shine brilliantly. The final reading on the pillar showed a staggering 124 million points. The moment Lu Shang's combat power was revealed, the entire evaluation center was thrown into chaos. The man recording the test scores fell backward, his tablet clattering to the ground. He planted both hands on the floor, staring wide-eyed at the towering crystal pillar, his body trembling. As the number 124 million flashed before him, he couldn't contain his excitement. Clenching both fists, he looked towards the pillar with a mixture of disbelief and awe. "He's a first-class master," he announced, his voice reverberating through the hall. The room fell silent as the gravity of his words sunk in. Captain Land's face went pale. He was left speechless, his previous bravado crumbling in the face of this revelation. How could this young man be a first-class master? It seemed like a cruel joke, but the evidence was irrefutable. Meanwhile, on the second floor of the Star General Evaluation Center, the mission delivery area bustled with activity. Soldiers moved about, some studying the mission board while others conversed in low tones. Among them was a man with striking purple hair, his hand resting on his waist as he examined the board. "Captain, check the level of the mission where we need to help rebuild the defense line," he asked, glancing at the muscular man beside him. The captain, hands in his pockets, surveyed the board with a calm expression. "The mission regarding the beast wave has been cancelled," he explained. "The western line of defense hasn't broken, and suddenly, it doesn't need cleaning anymore." The purple-haired man frowned. They had come prepared for this mission, but the lack of clear explanation from the army was perplexing. "What should we do now?" he asked. The captain's gaze shifted to the newly posted missions. "There are plenty of derivative missions in the new cave. Let's pick one of those." Nodding, the purple-haired man scanned the board. The new cave mission seemed intriguing and challenging. He agreed with the captain's suggestion, ready to adapt to the changing circumstances. Just then the ground beneath the evaluation center began to tremble. Panic ensued among the soldiers. They fell to the floor, their initial thought being an earthquake. The burly captain, one hand pressed firmly on the ground and the other on his knee, struggled to rise. His eyes widened in confusion. How could there be an earthquake in the heart of the military district? It defied logic. The captain's mind raced. He recalled a similar incident from the past when Admiral Chanong Xing had tested his combat ability, causing a similar tremor. A soldier beside him, equally perplexed, confirmed the memory, saying he had witnessed the event as well. The truth behind the tremor was tied to the crystal pillar. The burly captain stood, his gaze fixed on the ceiling above. "This isn't an earthquake," he declared, his voice steady but serious. "The crystal pillar below is connected to the entire building. The combat power appraisal room's synthetic crystal pillars are linked to the main axis. With enough force, it can shake the structure." His explanation drew everyone's attention. The soldiers exchanged worried glances, realizing the magnitude of what was happening. The ground's tremor was a testament to the immense power being measured below. As the ground continued to shake, the Star General list of the 9th War Zone began to update. Curious and anxious, the soldiers gathered around to see the new rankings. At the top of the list, in position number 1, was Lu Shang. His combat power was an astonishing 12.5 stars, though his merit value was not yet calculated. Despite his lack of merits, his comprehension rank was first overall, placing him 8th in the overall rank. In position number 2 was Admiral Chanong Xing, with a combat power of 9 stars. His merit value stood at 1,330,000, and his comprehension rank was second, giving him an overall rank of 12th. As the soldiers gathered around the updated Star General list, a wave of astonishment swept through the room. The burly captain wiped sweat from his brow, his eyes widening as he scrutinized the list. He had never encountered the name Lu Shang before and was bewildered by how someone could make such an unprecedented leap to the top of the rankings. Conversations erupted around him as the soldiers tried to make sense of this mysterious new contender. "Who's this Lu Shang?" one soldier murmured, his voice tinged with disbelief. "I've never heard of him." "Neither have I," another replied. "But look at his combat power, 12.5 stars. That's insane." Amidst the chatter, a chubby soldier with a joyful expression stepped forward. He clenched his fists in excitement, his eyes gleaming with hope. "The 9th District has produced another great first-class master," he said, his voice brimming with pride. "Even though his merit value hasn't been calculated yet, he's already 8th in the overall ranking. We might finally have an 8th Star General from the East." Just then, a captain with blonde hair and a prominent scar on his face approached, his arms crossed behind his back. He exuded an air of authority and confidence. "It's not just about obtaining the 8th star," he declared, his voice carrying a weight of experience. "Who among the 7-star generals from the East could boast 12.5 stars of combat power?" The highest we've seen was 11 stars when Admiral Chen Xing was tested. The captain's words silenced the murmuring crowd. He continued, his gaze intense. Lu Shang is only in 8th place overall because of his lack of merit value. But with his combat power, it's only a matter of time before he rises. We might be witnessing the emergence of a 9th-rank martial saint. His statement sent a ripple of excitement through the crowd. The possibility of producing a 9th-rank martial saint was a monumental achievement, one that would elevate their entire district. Driven by curiosity and a desire to witness greatness firsthand, the soldiers began to rush toward the testing room. Meanwhile, in the evaluation room, Lu Shang stood silently, his body shimmering with a golden aura, stood silently, his gaze fixed on his clenched fist. The energy coursing through him was a testament to his immense power. He found it hard to believe that he had surpassed 100 million combat power points with a single technique, the Heaven's Grasp. This realization left him both awed and contemplative. As he reflected, memories of his previous battles flickered through his mind. Even without fully mastering the immortal body cultivation technique and achieving immortal cells, he could easily dominate a great martial master. The thought of Zhang Kuei, whom he had effortlessly defeated, brought a smile to his face. Though Zhang Kuei wasn't a true master, the ease with which Lu Shang had overpowered him was a clear indication of his strength. Lu Shang recalled the standards set by the Martial Arts Association. A great master required a minimum of 20 million combat power points. Now, standing at 124 million, he had not only met but far exceeded that benchmark. His smile widened as he looked down, realizing he was on the cusp of a new realm of power. The weakest grandmasters boasted combat power much higher than 20 million, often doubling their strength upon crossing certain thresholds. The thought of reaching the rank 8 martial grandmaster level filled him with both excitement and determination. Meanwhile, the supervisor, a man of middle age with thinning hair and a nervous disposition, was visibly trembling as he retrieved the fallen tablet from the floor. His hands shook as he looked up at Lu Shang, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and awe. "Commander," the supervisor stammered, his voice barely above a whisper, "would you like to perform another test?" Lu Shang, emanating a calm yet formidable aura, shook his head slowly. "No need," he replied, his voice steady and composed. He began to walk away, his movements graceful and controlled. As he did, his body was enveloped in a powerful blue energy that seemed to pulse with his heartbeat. The supervisor's eyes widened further as he processed Lu Shang's words. "This is my current limit," Lu Shang added, his voice carrying a hint of casual indifference. "I haven't been resting well lately." The supervisor's mind raced. If this wasn't Lu Shang's true limit, then just how powerful was he capable of becoming? The thought sent a shiver down his spine. He could barely comprehend the magnitude of Lu Shang's potential. With trembling hands, he clutched the tablet tightly and lowered his head in respect. "Understood, Commander," he said, his voice shaking. "I'll enter the information immediately." As Lu Shang continued to walk away, a small, knowing smile played on his lips. Several seconds passed as Lu Shang approached Hongyu, who stood gazing at him with an expression that combined admiration and a deep, burgeoning affection. Her eyes sparkled with a mixture of pride and awe, unable to fully grasp the magnitude of his newfound power. Lu Shang, noticing her gaze, smiled cheerfully and asked, "So, what's next?" Hongyu's heart skipped a beat. She brought her hand near her mouth, her cheeks flushing a deep red as she tried to compose herself. She had always respected Lu Shang, but seeing him now, having achieved such an extraordinary feat, she couldn't help but feel her admiration turning into something more profound. Seconds ticked by, and she remained silent, lost in her thoughts. Lu Shang, puzzled by her lack of response, waved his hand in front of her face. "Are you okay, Hongyu?" Her reverie shattered by his voice, Hongyu snapped back to reality. She covered her mouth with her fist, trying to hide her embarrassment, and coughed lightly. Turning as red as a ripe tomato, she looked away, adopting a pose that was both seductive and composed. With a loving gaze, she explained, "Your military merits haven't been added yet, so for now, there's nothing else to do. You can choose your preferred residence." Meanwhile, Captain Lon, who had been watching this exchange, fell to his knees, a wave of despair washing over him. His heart ached as he witnessed the bond between Lu Shang and Hongyu, a bond he had hoped to share with her. He knelt on the ground, hands braced against his knees, feeling utterly defeated. Lu Shang noticed Captain Lan's distress and couldn't help but feel a pang of confusion. As Lan prostrated himself, striking his head against the ground, he apologized fervently. Please forgive my words, Lu Shang. I meant no disrespect. Lan's subordinates, witnessing their captain's abasement, quickly followed suit. The bald man among them began to sweat profusely, explaining in a trembling voice, "Our captain often speaks nonsense. He doesn't mean any harm." Another subordinate, shaking with fear, added, "Captain Lan is powerful but has his issues. We apologize on his behalf." Lu Shang, observing their sincere remorse, approached Captain Lan with a calm and pleasant expression. "Apology accepted. Just be mindful next time." Hongyu, who had been watching silently with her arms crossed, gave a nod of approval. Her respect for Lu Shang deepened, seeing how he handled the situation with grace and humility. Captain Lan, overwhelmed with gratitude and relief, rose slowly, his knees still trembling. He clasped his hands together, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you, Lu Shang. Thank you for your understanding," he choked out. His subordinates, still kneeling, echoed their thanks, their voices a mixture of awe and fear. Lan placed both hands on the ground, sobbing openly. In his mind, he pictured Lu Shang on a throne, a symbol of unmatched power and grace, with Hongyu by his side. The thought of having angered someone of such caliber was terrifying. He also felt a sting of resentment toward Hongyu, viewing her newfound closeness to Lu Shang as opportunistic. Just then, the door to the evaluation room swung open with a loud creak. A blonde-haired captain, his eyes wide with surprise, burst into the room. "Who is Master Lu Shang?" he demanded, his voice cutting through the tension. Behind him, a group of soldiers poured in, their expressions a mix of curiosity and reverence. Lu Shang and Hongyu turned their attention toward the newcomers, remaining silent. The room fell into an uneasy hush, the air thick with anticipation.